This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Prime. In association with Micromax. Nothing like anything.
The man with me is the man himself, John Sculley. Thank you very much for being with us on the show again. You and I have had an opportunity to talk before. That was a shorter one. This, I think, is our first heart-to-heart. So let's get started. First of all, congratulations. You've got a brand new venture, but one amongst many. So today, I think we'll talk about everything. But unfortunately, I can't get away from one of the things that you're always associated with, which is, of course, Apple and Steve Jobs. So let's get that out of the way. Lots of questions on Twitter. When I did say I'm speaking with John Sculley, I've got thousands of people asking. I selected 2 or 3 from there. Let's start with that. Now, we all know about how it happened, what happened. You and me have spoken about it before. But what about the fact that after all of it happened, Steve Jobs left the company, you carried on. Did the two of you then interact later? Were you friends? How was the relationship afterwards? Did you two contemplate on what could have been if you had carried on working together?
Well, we did have interactions afterwards. I've never gone into it publicly, but 'cause I think both Steve and I have a lot of interest in privacy. But I think that as time went on, both of us had more and more respect for the partnership we had. People may not know just how close Steve and I were. I mean, it was an amazing friendship. I was like almost an older brother to him. Remember, he had no brother, he had a sister. And he was an incredibly inspiring person. And we actually had a friendship. As people think of Steve Jobs, they think of his brilliance, of his creativity, but they haven't always seen the other side of Steve Jobs, which I did, which was to see him personally and to see him laugh and giggle, and we would joke around and talk about other things than just technology. And we were together, you know, incessantly, and it was an amazing time when we were together. I'm sorry that we did have the commercial breakup, but you know, both of us learned a lot after that. And Steve did end up being the world's greatest CEO and an inspiration to everybody. And I'm as inspired by Steve Jobs as anybody else.
Fantastic. In fact, that's one of the things that you and me spoke about last time. You said the Steve Jobs that you knew when he was with Apple and then left, the mercurial, fairly rebellious person, and the person who came back later after he'd gone away and then came back to Apple was a very, very different person. So would you say at some point that the relationship you had with him and everything that happened is the reason Apple became what it is today?
Well, what I will say is that Aaron Sorkin and Danny Boyle have done a new movie called Steve Jobs. It's coming out, I believe October 9 will be the official release on it. I've seen it, and I've got to say it is as entertaining as Social Network or Slumdog Millionaire, which were Academy Award winning movies by both of those individuals. But it really reveals the true Steve Jobs, the person. So it isn't just trying to be a biography, but it reveals Steve Jobs as I knew Steve Jobs. And I think people will be pleasantly surprised at just how good a person he really was. He kind of hid it from the world. He wanted the world to think of himself as a bad boy, but there was another Steve Jobs, and the world will see it in this new film.
Okay, so who plays you, and are you happy with the way you've been depicted in the movie?
Well, I have another leading film star playing me named Jeff Daniels. Right. And Kate Winslet plays Joanna Hoffman, who was a close advisor to Steve, and Michael Fassbender, who was another Academy Award winner, plays Steve Jobs. So I think it's going to be one of the, there'll be some Academy Award nominations from this film, I would predict.
So the part that now intrigues a lot of people, and I think you and me spoke a little bit about it, that was before 1 or 2 of the very big products that had to come out from Apple were yet to come out, is that Apple, of course, I mean, there's no doubts about it. It's right there in our faces that this is an incredible company, an iconic company. But there is also now a lot of speculation about the fact that every single product that still has the touch of Steve Jobs is doing well. And every single product that has been released, which wasn't a Steve Jobs vision, has not done well. In fact, from failure to middling to mediocre success. We can talk about the iPhone 5C, which most people say Steve Jobs would never have signed off on, a plastic phone. or we have the Apple Watch, which was supposed to revolutionize the wearable smartwatch market. We've seen it go from extreme success to what now a lot of people are saying are very poor sales. We've seen the new MacBook. So we've had some stumbles for the iPhone itself also, right? So do you believe this to be a problem? Is Apple, the company, really what it is now, or did it still need a Steve Jobs at every single point?
Well, I think that we have to give Tim Cook a lot of credit. He's a great leader, managing the world's largest, and many would say the most complex supply chain business in the world. And he's done brilliantly well. The company stock has grown substantially under his leadership. He has a highly respected team. He has kept to the first principles that Steve Jobs had. But Tim Cook is never represented himself as being Steve Jobs. Fortunately, he has Johnny Ives by his side, who is an extraordinary genius level designer. And my expectations is that there's still a lot ahead to tell the full story about Apple and innovation. I have very high hopes that Apple's going to reinvent television, just as they reinvented music. And I think, to me, that was always a much bigger opportunity than the Apple Watch. I think the Apple Watch is highest fit, finish, all the things you would expect from Apple. I don't own an Apple Watch.
But you do use most of the other
I
products.
use every one of their products.
Except for the Apple
That's
Watch,
the only,
and that seems to be exactly the way the Apple Watch is
well,
going.
it's the only Apple product I've never had an urge to run out and buy, which doesn't mean it's a bad product. It just means, for me, I love all of Apple's other products. We are constantly refreshing and buying more Apple products. We think they're wonderful. For the Apple Watch, it just wasn't one that I had a particular urge for. Carrying the iPhone in my pocket when I run with my Apple Watch didn't seem like something to fit how I like to do things. But I only have admiration for what Apple is doing with Apple Pay, with Apple TV, where I think that's going to go. I think Apple will be a real factor in the automobile industry. What is an automobile? It's a computer on wheels. And I think you're going to see Google and Apple, just as Tesla has gone into the automotive industry. And I think the automotive industry needs to get reset for some real innovation, because they obviously aren't the ones who have historically done it. Just like I think the cable television industry is about to wake up, and they're going to see Apple and some others come in with over-the-top network services with much better user interfaces. And they're going to reinvent the whole world of television. So I think it's way too early to say that Apple's lost the edge in innovation.